So we're sitting here in front of a tree that is thousands of years old. It is almost indestructible. And this is also, by coincidence, the biggest tree, or at least the biggest known tree in the entire world. It's called the General Sherman. Look it up. It's right there. Now in this video, what I want you to do is use this tree as a metaphor for confidence. Because what I want to do in this video is teach you, number one, how to have towering confidence, massive confidence, just like this tree right here. But number two is I want to teach you how to have indestructible confidence.
Oh, miles, I wish you could have stayed. Not only 'cause I feel your hurt the same. We push and pull and try to stop the rain. Left us out, I miss you the most. Oh, miles, where did you go? When these are the times I need you the most. Oh, what have I thrown away, away, away,
So this is a video that's going to make a distinction between general mental health and having supreme confidence and indestructible confidence. And here's what I mean by that. General mental health means that you can go about your life and have a generally happy experience. You can go to work, maybe work for somebody else, maybe run a nice, cool little business, maybe have a cool social life, cool dating life, and you can be generally confident, you can be generally happy. To me, that is good general mental health. A lot of people actually struggle to even get there, just basic level happiness. They can even struggle to get there. But what I want to show you in this video is something that goes a little bit beyond that. I want to actually go a little bit past that and to something where you have so much confidence that maybe you'd be inspired to go on to make millions of dollars. Maybe you'd be inspired to have the most crazy, insane social life or dating life of anybody who you know. Or maybe you're inspired to take a particular skill set that you have or opportunity that you have and completely change the world. And when you think about it, imagine that you were someone who is, say, an explorer from Europe, and you decided that you're going to take a boat across the ocean and come to America and start braving all those perils and learn about this unknown continent across the world. Or let's say that you're somebody who was living in Africa and you began to actually move up the coastline and cross over into Europe. Or let's just say that you're somebody who sees that space isn't being optimized the way that we're going to space because the government's running it, and you say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to make the first private space company. Or maybe you see that people don't understand social skills or dating skills. You say, you know what, I'm going to go out for 20 years and do social experiments and get this down and build an entire company around it. Whatever it is, right? Could be athletic, could be anything. Well, if you're going to do that, in my experience, that's going to take a little bit more confidence than the average person has. You can't just say to yourself, okay, just be kind of generally happy, have good mental health. It's going to have to go beyond that. And in my experience, what's going to have to happen is you're going to have to intentionally curate really just this kind of savage confidence. But see, the problem with even that, and this is what I've noticed, is that if you don't build your confidence the right way, if you're not kind of building it on the right pillars, what you sometimes wind up doing is you build this huge structure, this huge edifice that could actually be very unstable, or could be this kind of monstrosity, this weird Frankenstein monster that you've curated, and you wind up becoming like this raging jerk, or it winds up getting to the point where if you hit a little bit of friction, you just come tumbling down. It's just a complete mess. Now, I don't know this situation from top to bottom, but look at somebody like, say, Tiger Woods, right? He's just killing it. And then all of a sudden, because he was known as being sort of conservative, he was the golden boy, everybody liked him, he got caught being a little bit naughty. And again, there could be some other reasons for this. It could be injuries that he had, whatever. But he struggled to win again for many years. He eventually re-won the Masters, is my understanding. But it took many, many years. It got messed up. And I've even seen this myself. I can remember I started my business in 2002, and by 2005, I was on top of the industry. It was crazy, totally crazy. And I was sitting there just feeding off the adulation of huge crowds. I'd be walking into crowds of hundreds of people, close to 1,000 people. Everybody's cheering my name, saying how great they're enjoying it. It's just going totally awesome. And I remember an old roommate of mine, Neil Strauss, he wrote a book about the industry, and he, did a portrayal that frankly kind of pulled out the rug of that adulation. All of a sudden, if you've read it, it's about 200 pages, and it's pretty brutal, right? And that went out, that became an Amazon top-selling book, and it went out everywhere. And I can tell you from experience, my confidence was completely crushed. I had spent about maybe 3 years up until that point, building this huge edifice of confidence, going in front of crowds of hundreds of people, close to 1,000 people all over the world. People were all saying how great it was, and all of a sudden, I'm walking into environments where maybe people didn't really like me. Maybe they thought I was a jerk, and I'd have to actually change the way my confidence was structured to not really care what it was that people thought of me. I'd also see this when I'm working on my social skills. I'd be on this great run with my social skills, meeting a lot of new people, having all these wild, fun new experiences, and maybe I would hit a bit of a dry spell, and I could see that it was really messing up my confidence. It was just like kind of pulling the legs out from under me. In addition to that, and this is also kind of funny, I would see people that were just naturally very confident, because sometimes I would learn from people who were consciously building their social skills, people who were not good socially, and then we're kind of going out of their way to get better socially and build their social skills. So sometimes I learned from people that had to learn it consciously, but other times I would actually learn from naturals, people who are naturally really social, people who are naturally amazing at dating to the point that they're just crushing it. I learned from all sorts of people. And one of the problems that I noticed with naturals is that when you had someone who was naturally successful socially or naturally successful in dating, you'd see that if people didn't I would call it kind of feeding their frame, like if they didn't have it to where people were giving them props all the time, it would really throw them off. And so they became almost difficult to deal with, where you're meeting someone who's really confident, they're really successful, and you want to learn from them, but because they didn't consciously build it, sometimes they can get cranky, they can get snappy, they can get irritable. And I thought to myself, I don't want to become that. That's not who I want to be. And I could actually see this in myself in large part as well, because one area that I'm not really proud of in myself, and I just saw that it was a problem that I was having, was that I built a lot of my confidence as a coach. And so anytime that I felt a lack of confidence, what I would try to do is I would try to start just coaching people randomly, like, you need this, you need that. I'd start coaching them and trying to, in effect, frame control them to become kind of like a student of mine. Like I'm trying to make them into the student, whereas I'm the teacher, because I feel uncomfortable. Or again, this other huge problem that I had was that I was really good at going out to, say, bars and clubs and parties and generating a really fun response. Like I could go meet anybody, I could be meeting everybody in the whole venue, and I'm having fun with everybody, and I'm getting everybody laughing and having fun. But anytime that someone wasn't laughing at my jokes or showing that they're really into me, I could feel my confidence drop. And that bothered me. I'm like, why do I need to be on this epic win streak of everybody loving all my jokes for me to feel confident? And then as soon as they're not giving me that response, I could feel my inner dopamine levels, just that inner confidence, just begin to drop. So this was kind of this really big problem that I could observe. And what I began to realize over time was that, in effect, when you're building your confidence, it's almost being built like a bird's nest, where, imagine you're constructing a bird's nest. It's like all these different little sticks and twigs and like little leaves like this. I'm not really clear how a bird's nest is built, but you get my point. It's like all these little this bunch of leaves that's all kind of wired together, right? And I'm using that example because it reminds me of how your brain has synaptic pathways, right? So as you're building your confidence, your brain has all these different synaptic pathways, and it's kind of moving through these different synaptic pathways, which you have either A, you consciously curated it, or frankly, B, you haven't consciously curated it, you've just kind of stumbled into being a natural. And the thing is, those little pathways hold up under certain types of pressure, but under other types of pressure, they just collapse. And I've just seen this for many years. So in my case, because I came from having almost no confidence, I really struggled socially, and I struggled with my confidence for most of my life growing up. And then finally gaining confidence, I'd see that my confidence would collapse at certain times, and that just really bothered me. I didn't want to be that person where my confidence could collapse. Now, kind of last point on this, and this is kind of funny, a little bit lowbrow. I'm not proud of this, but just being honest. When I was younger, because I didn't have a lot of confidence, and again, I don't advise doing this, and I don't do this now, but I was very lost. I was frankly just such a lost soul when I'm younger. One of my favorite things to do was I'd go into a bar or club, and I would look for the tallest, best looking, most alpha dominant person I could find. And I'd walk up, and whoever it was with, that they're maybe on a date with, or whoever they're with, I'd go up and I'd kind of start messing with them a little bit. And again, I'm not proud of this. I don't recommend this, I'm not proud of it. But I start to mess them a little bit. And sometimes, the one thing will lead to another, and maybe I'd be kind of running off, on some wild fun adventure with the person who they came with. And the way that it would happen was, we'd kind of start teasing each other a little bit. I'd kind of initiate that. We'd start to tease each other, and I could kind of kick the legs out from underneath that person. And once I kicked the legs out from them, just by kind of teasing them in the right way or kind of striking a nerve, I could sort of tease and frame control and strike a nerve. You'd see their confidence collapse. And then just by the laws of nature and evolution, their person who they came with, who was maybe interested in them, would suddenly lose interest in them and jump interest on me, and then we'd wind up running off together. And I think that was a very lame thing to do, but as a lost soul when I'm younger, I felt so beaten down, and like the popular kids in high school would make fun of me and whatnot. So suddenly I'm the one who's like, on the end of kind of dishing it out. And I'd find like, those 6'4", square cut jaw, confident people, super funny, super confident, super hilarious. Like, they're dating whoever they want. And I just go in there and be like, look at me. I'm the little ginger gnome and look what I can do. And I'd be doing that. And I would do that night after night after night. And I'd have a lot of success with that. I think that that's rots your soul out. I don't think there's anything good about that at all. Don't do it. But just rather, like Jay-Z says, Hove did that. So hopefully you don't have to do that. Well, I did that, and I learned how it worked. And while I'm not proud of that behavior, I can tell you that I learned a lot about how confidence is structured, because literally from doing that 3-4 hours a night, like I would just pick the most intimidatingly confident people that I could find. And it was kind of like a freestyle battle rap. We just go battle it out, and it was a lot of fun. And I think it's fair competition, but I also just think that people hear about that and they kind of glorify it, so that's why I don't want to encourage it. But the point being was that I learned really quickly, the way your confidence is structured is your strength. Like, the structure that you have can have the legs kicked out from under it in a big, big way. And, when you're in that mating ground, right, no different than the rams just going bang, right, and whoever's stronger is going to collapse the other ram. The way that we do that as human beings is the way that our confidence is structured, right? Like the way a ram would actually have it to where, their horns are a certain way, or their muscles are a certain way, their strength. As humans, that's the way that our confidence is. And if we can keep up our confidence, and if we can keep ourselves just completely in that mode where we have towering confidence, but we also have that indestructible confidence, right? Really just like that incredible sequoia tree, just like these trees that you see here. These sequoias, again, they're virtually indestructible. Like it says right here, in front of you stands the General Sherman tree. Its claim to fame as the biggest tree in the world comes from the volume of its trunk. And, the top of the Sherman tree is dead. The tree's trunk no longer gets taller. However, the volume keeps increasing. Every year it gets wider, adding enough wood to, to equal another giant-sized tree. Again, it's just getting more girth, getting stronger. Every year that you go through your life, as you're building your confidence structure, you can build this crazy powerful structure that is virtually indestructible. But see, here's the key of it. There's a book called Anti-Fragile. And the idea in that book is that you don't just want to be strong and powerful, but the book called Anti-Fragile, it's this idea that of certain things that gain from disorder, okay? So when it gets hit with something, it actually gets stronger, okay? So something like, say, this rock right here is very tough, but if you can kind of just hit the right angle and go, boom, you can split that thing apart. But there's certain things where when you hit them, they actually get shooken up a little bit and they get stronger. And see, that was where, when I'd be in those bars and clubs and kind of battling it out, right? Like the rams on the mating field, battling it out, I could see like someone's very strong, but they have this very rigid type of confidence. And I could, from years of doing it, I could just be like, blink, like that. And you just see it go, like right down. You see them collapse. And then again, just by the, by the laws of evolution, who they're with is like, boom. And then we're like, ta-ta. And I would just see this night after night. So as a result of that, I could just see this for years and years and years, just watching this play out night after night. And also, frankly, just with me grooming coaches, I've not only groomed coaches on my own team, but I've actually groomed a lot of the major coaches on the platforms that you're seeing. I work with them behind the scenes. It's in confidence. I work with them. And so I'm always building up something like, frankly, the top people in a number of the different major niches are my one-on-one clients. And I build them up, and I've got to build them up in the right way, because they're going to have other YouTubers attacking them and trolling them. And I've got to get it to where when they're getting attacked and trolled, it's just building them up more and more, and they're actually gaining strength off of it. So that's the main idea of this video. Is I want to look at different types of confidence, and I want you to start thinking about the way that your confidence is being built, and is it being built in a way that is actually resilient, strong, powerful, towering, to where you can go on to be that highly socially successful person where you walk into a venue and you're going to make friends with everybody there, and you're going to run off with a wild adventure with only the best people there. Not to mention go make those millions of dollars. Not to mention maybe become a top influencer online, or somebody who is the top in their field with a skill, or does something that takes a risk, or whatever else it is, right? Because human beings, we're not just meant to have I think, like, yeah, we can have general mental health. That's amazing. General mental health, great, have that. I'm not saying, and if you're someone who's not mentally healthy, I'm not saying that the answer is, you've got to become the supreme Viking is the answer to your problems. No, just, maybe for now, just work on being a little bit happy. But here's the funny thing with that. Sometimes I find that if you just aim at being a little bit happy, you're like, I just want to be a little happy. Well, it's kind of almost not ambitious enough. And what winds up happening as a result is that you never even wind up even getting that. So in my case, you never even wind up just being generally happy. So what I found was, when I was aiming bigger, on one level it messed me up a bit, because I was kind of building up my confidence that it would get knocked down. I was building up my confidence that it would get knocked down. But what I found was that over time, it was actually more ambitious, right? It's like if I were to say to you, like, hey, you got to save your money, like, life's tough, and you got to put away a little bit in a piggy bank. Or what if I said to you, we're going to go travel the world right now. We're going to push the limit. We're going to see the world. We're going to go to the best locations. We're going to do the most incredible things, right? So see, one of them is like, oh yeah, I do need to save a bit, and life's a little hard, right? You're kind of playing defense. But sometimes if you could just go boom, like, right, move into offense, it almost sort of activates a different part of the brain, doesn't it, right? It's like you're the ram, and I'm like, you don't want to get hit by that other ram. Oh no, here comes the ram, run everybody, and you're like, oh, you have to run away, oh. You're right, but if I say, no, we're going to dominate, right? You're going to smack him down, you're going to mate, right? Like all that kind of, you're like, yes, right? And it actually, weirdly, it activates a different part of the brain, and it just wipes the fear away, and your confidence starts to build, right? Instead of being in what's called prevention orientation, you go into what's called promotion orientation, right? It's actually a different part of the brain. No different. You go to the top of a diving board, like, it's scary, can't do it, right? And then you're just like, I'm afraid, what could happen, right? Instead of just storming up and just flying off the diving board, doing it again and again, and just feeding off the rush. So that's what I'm getting at here. Let's think to ourselves, what does it mean to go beyond just mental health, but to go to supreme confidence? But then from there, what would it mean to curate that confidence correctly? It's like a bird's nest. As you're wiring it together, you don't want to have to come and unwire the whole thing like what I did when I got taken down. I realized I'd built my confidence on the wrong pillars. I had to undo the whole thing for 3 years. I was like in this nightmare for 3 years, and then rebuild it back on a more stable foundation. So that's our goal here now, is we got to be thinking, what is the most anti-fragile, towering, powerful, almost indestructible confidence, to where you can put it to the test, and you don't just get confidence as a short-term fix, but you get confidence that can take you for the duration of the entire journey.
Find the girl that sends a shiver through your world to watch the moon.
So I feel that you're seeing the general idea here, which is that there's two criteria. One, which is confidence that is big or small, but another is confidence that can be poked at, and whether or not it collapses easily. Some forms of confidence, like we said, actually gets stronger the more that you get messed with. Other forms of confidence collapse. So you don't just want to have massive confidence. You want to have confidence where people can kick at you and poke at you because they will. And when they kick at you and poke at you, whether it's people, whether it's hard events in life, you actually get stronger from it. You got to be aware of how you're building your confidence. Now, the first area that I want to get very specific here as far as what we're talking about is confidence that is built like a web versus confidence that is built like pillars. Now, here's what I mean. Some of my buddies that are naturals, just naturally confident, they have this kind of, have you ever seen the show Kenny Powers, Eastbound and Down, where Kenny Powers just thinks that he's amazing at everything? He just thinks he's God's gift, right? And so what'll happen is that if someone's confidence is built in a web, it's always about reinforcing their frame. So everything they do is just more evidence of how amazing they are. And this just goes on and on and on. And they're generally very narcissistic. And frankly, a lot of narcissists can be very, very successful. Let's not deny that. But the problem with it is that they're unable to see things clearly or get any kind of feedback. They're often even unable to learn from experience because they're constantly guarding their frame, right? So here's what I mean by a web. Let's say that you're like, I'm amazing. I'm good at everything. I'm so smart. I'm so great. I'm so awesome. And this loop just keeps going and going. Well, when all of a sudden you get contradictory evidence, either A, you have to deny it. You're like, no, that can't be true. I am the best. And then you deny it, which inevitably the problems are going to mount and mount and mount because you're denying a reality. And then eventually everything's going to come tumbling down. Or B, you're admit right now that you messed up, in case your whole confidence is destroyed, right? In effect, what you have with confidence is it's kind of like this dopamine prop-up mechanism. Just say that word back to me. Dopamine prop-up mechanism. You remember that video I shot in Grand Canyon? I talk about the winner effect. If not, look it up. I'll link to it here. What I said there is that when you're getting the right feedback, it just sort of props up your dopamine. It's this mechanism that we have in our minds that when we're getting good feedback, it pumps up our brain neurochemistry so we feel super duper confident. Then as we feel confident, we act confident. As we act confident, people give us more good feedback. We go into an upward spiral. If we lose dopamine, then we act less confident. As we act less confident, people are repelled from us, and then we feel even less confident, right? So a lot of time we're in this constant dopamine protection mode, frame protection mode. You ever have it where maybe you go to a bar or club and you're meeting someone and you really like them, but then rather than maybe continuing to have an amazing adventure that night together that you both enjoy, or maybe continuing to maybe grabbing each other's contact information, you just sort of leave with the validation. You're like, well, they like me, something totally could have happened. Then you run away. This is a major problem with people learning social skills, right? They leave with the validation because they're in this constant dopamine defense mode, right? Or maybe they wander around a venue and they're thinking of going to meet somebody, but they're afraid to go meet somebody because they're afraid that they would lose dopamine. Or maybe they meet a few people in a row and they have these great social interactions and it makes them feel very personally attractive, but then they run home halfway through the night because they feel so good, they don't want to have a state crash. So I call that leaving with the dopamine or leaving with the validation. If you're at a point where you're not basing your confidence based on your character, but it's based on your reputation or, validation in the moment, that is a very, very fragile form of confidence. You're going to see these huge swings where your confidence is surging up and then it shoots down. And that's what used to happen to me when I was learning about all this stuff. I'd have these huge swings of confidence, right? And I'm feeling like, I am amazing, I am Dragon Ball Z. And then I would shoot down in this like super depression. And frankly, once you've had a taste of that confidence and you lose it, it feels even worse. It's like going from the hot end of the pool, the nice warm jacuzzi, to the cold plunge. It's painful. So, you get to the point where with these ups and downs, you really, really want to get your confidence not just towering, but also stable or even anti-fragile where it gains from being messed with, okay? And I can literally teach you this in this video, how to get it to where when your confidence is getting messed with, you actually become even more confident. It get really, really crazy here, okay? So again, like I said, the first thing that we want to understand is that if your confidence is built in this web of how amazing you are, then either A, anytime that you're proven wrong, you can't accept the feedback because you're trying to preserve your confidence, because if you lost your confidence, then you'd act less confident, then people will be repelled from you. So as a matter of survival within the tribe, you can't ever admit you're wrong. How many people do you know like that, right? Are you like that? We all have that. That's web-based confidence in the mind. All the whole connection in the mind, all the synaptic pathways, all about how great you are, versus a pillars-based confidence, right? Pillars is where you're like, I'm pretty good at this, I'm pretty good at this, I'm pretty good at this, and maybe you even base it on things like, I try my best. And then what happens is that anytime that one pillar gets knocked down, oh, maybe I wasn't so good at this. Oh, maybe I did lose this. Oh, maybe I did lose this reputation. Oh, maybe I didn't get this feedback. All these other pieces are all still there. So literally, if you have not a web-based confidence, but pillars-based confidence, I could say to you, hey, guess what? You're wrong here, and you could get way better if you learn this new way. And you say, Amazing. Thank you. In fact, it even builds confidence because every time that you find out you're wrong, you can improve and you feel amazing. So this is even what I did in my content. You might have seen this, where over the years, we've taught live events in 265 cities and 75 countries around the world, hundreds of thousands of people, literally face-to-face meeting them, and millions online. We've taught so many people. Every day I walk down the street, I get incredible feedback of how our content is changing people's lives. People come up to me with wives, with businesses where they're making tons of money. People that come up to me and say they would have committed suicide if it weren't for me. And again, I really think that's on them, but I'm glad to provide inspiration. So on one side, okay, we have great content. We've worked incredibly hard on our content. We've spent years, field testing and battle testing it, out teaching it live in the field and watching the different successes and failures. I've done this in my entire adult life. It's all I've done, right? So the content's great. But see, I don't just rest on my laurels there and say, the content's tested, we're great. No. I say, listen, we've done the best we can. We have really, really tried here. We have not only taught hundreds of thousands of people face-to-face, millions online, took all the feedback, met with naturals, met with people that, were learning it. We've not only done that, but we've also kept an open mind the entire time. What I always say is that my content is open source. What do I mean by open source? Anybody can come pick up my content, and if they show me where I'm wrong, I'm not like, no, I'm not wrong, you're wrong, blah, and get all reactive. I'm like, wow, thanks for the feedback. It's weird, you'll see people that will comment on my content online. They're like, this is wrong, and I'm like, why do you feel the need to make this nasty video? Why don't you call me on the phone? If you're another content creator, I'd be so excited to hear from you, especially if you're in my niche. Tell me where I'm wrong and we'll talk about it. I'll even show you some of my ideas. We'll meet up, we'll grab dinner, tell me. And then I'll take those ideas that you're giving and I'll talk about them in my videos that'll get a lot of views and I'll give you credit for it. And I do this all the time. It makes me so happy to do that. But again, I'm not in this weird competitive mode, like it's about idea warfare against everybody. I'm in a collaborative mode where I like feedback. So here's the key there. Yes, work hard on your ideas, but always make it open source. You're a work in progress. And at higher level paradigms, you're gonna change and you're gonna evolve and you're gonna have new ideas. What does that mean? That means that even though people are coming to me, giving me props on my content, thanks for the props on the content. That makes me feel really happy that it helped you get a result. I also know that if somebody insults the content, I'm not going to get salty or defensive about it, at least overly, because my identity is open source. We've evolved every year based on feedback. That's what our community is supposed to be. It's not meant to be people attacking each other. It's not people attacking the community from the outside. If anything, what it should be is taking that feedback and actually strengthening the content and improving it and taking it to the next level for our beautiful community. That's what it's got to be about. And that's why we've evolved every single year. I mean, I can tell you, when I was new to this, I was just focused on the kind of outer methods and the step-by-step. Later, I learned about the inner side and building inner confidence, and I incorporated that in. Later, people would say to me, hey, Owen, you're sending people out there, they might have trauma, you're not even helping them with their trauma, you're just sending them out there to get wounded. I'm like, okay, we'll learn about trauma healing. Spend 2 years, 3 years at the start. Now we spent half a decade learning about trauma healing, bringing that in, transformation mastery. Then people would say to me, hey, it's not just about meeting people randomly with your social skills, it's about building social circles. If anything, just doing only randomly meeting people on the street or in a bar or club, that's not good enough, bro. You should teach people how to make friends and have a social circle. Poof, landed, took it on, and then spent another couple of years tracking down the right people to teach social circle and to build that. No matter what it is that we're missing, we're going to teach it. We always want to teach it. We're always taking it to another level. And in areas that we're not perfect with it, or I mean, it's never perfect, so I'll take that back. But in areas that we're not as strong as we could be, like say, I don't know, go learn from Eckhart Tolle. Go read The Power of Now. Go read about my favorite business books. Go attend these other seminars. We literally we take our business and say, don't even buy from us. Go buy from other people. Get the best information. And when you do, you're going to love it so much, you're going to come back to me and you're going to want to do even more business with me. What that means, yeah, maybe I lose some customers here or there, but as a result of losing some customers, it builds more trust in me. It's like you go to a shirt store and you're like, oh, I kind of like this shirt. I was kind of looking for something like this. And then the salesperson says to you, hey, you know what? I love to sell you these shirts, but guess what? There's better shirts over there for what you want today. Go buy those over there and come back here when you're ready for these types of shirts. You're going to never forget that salesperson. You're going to come back and do even more business with them. You're going to make even more money, which then's going to build them up, right? So do you really want to be always in defensive mode all the time? That's kind of weird. I'd rather be just in a sharing mode, a collaborative mode, an open source mode, a non-defensive mode, in a pillars mode, rather than being this weird web where it's like, I'm the best one, everyone else sucks. Look at how much they suck. Why are they doing it? You ever seen people online where all they do is just they're constantly criticizing other people, saying how they're the best and everybody else sucks. They're like, no, I'm the savior. I'm saving it from the bad people in the wrong way because I'm the only one with the right way. Not realizing there's people probably light years even ahead of them that they're probably teaching the method of the same teacher they're insulting, they're probably teaching a dumbed down version of that method that teacher doesn't even teach anymore, using the same jargon, terminology, methods. Maybe they put a little tweak on it, rationalizes there, teaching the same types of programs, everything. And then meanwhile, they're using that and they're so deficient on dopamine, they're so not confident in themselves that all day long, they just fixate on, I'm better, they suck, I'm better, they suck, I'm a hero, I'm the protector, and they just do this on a loop. It's really unhealthy. And many of these are great teachers, good people that are actually teaching some good stuff. But they're just looping on that, and it's blocking their growth from actually continuing to grow and master their craft. And frankly, look, in my opinion, you're either expanding or contracting. You're either expanding, like as a teacher, you should be getting those 1,000-person crowds. You should be getting those videos that are doing hundreds of thousands of views. You should be growing and becoming super famous and being very successful. But if you're like, no, the reason I'm not is because they're blocking me with the wrong stuff, that's why. And your whole confidence is like, that you're this weird martyr who people won't see because you're being blocked by the wrong stuff and that's why you're not super famous or successful. That's just wrong. That's a highly defensive confidence mechanism that is involving being overly competitive, needing to put other people down to pump your dopamine because you feel like you're better than them, so it gives you a dopamine high. Then you get addicted to it. Then you feel like you're this weird hero, and then you never put out content that is actually to your ability, even though you have huge potential and could do amazing things. But again, winners focus on winners, winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners. There's this great meme where, this one swimmer is just shooting forward and then the other one's kind of looking to the side, looking at them. I don't even know who really won that race or not, but you get the general idea or sentiment behind it. So again, where's your confidence based? Is it based on sharing or is it based on being a hater? And which one is going to get you further in life? Which one's going to get you those millions of dollars, thousands of person crowd, teaching millions of people, growing yourself? And which one's going to keep you always losing, playing defensive, and then further and further in this hellish contracted reality, right? So again, it's not just about being super confident, having towering confidence. It's about building your confidence in the right way. What we mentioned here, always open source, always collaborative, never in scarcity, willing to even, let other people win too, and even suggest other people to other sources. And also knowing that you're never under attack. Just because one area you're not good, you could actually be good in other areas. It's not just about your reputation, it's about your character. You've got to set it up like that. And as you're in your head looping and looping and looping, what you think about predominantly becomes your reality, right? What you're constantly predominantly thinking about, that is like building a nest. That's the web of synaptic pathways in the mind. And if for some reason that gets pulled, boom, your confidence shoots down. Look, I've been there. I'm towering in confidence, and then bang, you get humbled. Bang, you get checked. Bang, you get freaking pushed down. You get your head just kicked in the dirt, just bang, 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 right? Down there. And again, I frankly kind of dished it out back in the day. I'd be at the bar club, some super confident, 6'4", good looking. How could that little garden gnome do anything? And I'm just like the wizard. Easy. No problem. Because I'm loose, I'm not attached. Loose, having fun. They diss me, it bounces off. I'm just like, oh, it's funny. Collaborative frame. Bam, dish, down, right? Then you're running off for an adventure with who they came with. I don't do that. I did that in my early 20s, so I was a very hurt person. It's not a good thing to do. But I saw this every day. I was going out back then, 4, 5, 6, 7 nights a week for many hours a day, and this would happen all through the night. I watched this happen for decades. So I know exactly how confidence is structured, right? So you've got to get it to the point where, again, if you feel your confidence surging, ask yourself, what are you basing it off of? And I don't mean to make you paranoid, If you're feeling a little surging confidence, go enjoy it. You don't need to be like, oh no, I did the exact way. I'm not trying to add all these other layers to kind of bash yourself over the head. But do be aware that as you build it, things can change quick. So as you're building that confidence, just to be aware of how you're doing it. Again, think of these trees here as a metaphor. You want to be that anti-fragile, indestructible tree.
Oh, miles you change this life for good. It spins in ways I never thought it could. Take all that we have grown and watch how it still blooms. Oh, I'm far from you. Oh, miles I wish you could have stayed.
The next thing that we're gonna do is contrast different types of confidence in terms of specific criteria. The first one that we're gonna do is talk about what's called high vibration energy-based confidence. And the second one that we're gonna talk about is low vibration energy-based confidence. Now, this is getting really into a weird zone if you're not familiar with this type of content. And I also wanna be clear here that what we're gonna be talking about is known as pseudoscience or pseudopsychology. And that means that it's different from the kind of psychology that's studied in a college or university that is tested empirically. This is more speculative and inaccurate. Now, what you're going to find in the next couple hundred years is this will be studied more, and then we're going to get really clear on what this means. But sitting here in 2020, as I'm shooting this, it's a pseudoscience, okay? Now, this pseudoscience is what you'd call in spiritual growth how to raise your vibration, okay, your vibrational scale. Do you come from high vibration like love and peace and joy and sharing and expansion and abundance, and that's fueling you? Or do you come from, say, negativity, like you win while others lose, scarcity, attacking, depression, anger, rage? This is very much what you'd see in a movie like Star Wars. Star Wars is a fictional movie, but the idea of the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force. And in my personal opinion and experience, and this goes very, very deep, it's actually a real thing. This whole idea of the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force. Now, very briefly, I'm going to explain this to you in a way that is going to be hard to understand now, but you'll understand it later as you go further down this path. High vibration energy, or the light side of the Force, is based on what you'd call release, and it's a more diffused energy. Whereas the dark side of the Force is based on control, and it's a very dense, focused energy, right? So high vibration energy is very diffused. Low vibration energy is focused like a laser. High vibration energy is about letting go and allowing energy to move through you and just sort of guiding it loosely. Low vibration energy is about deep, deep control and being very, very focused. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's say that you get very present to the moment, okay? What happens is that your awareness, instead of being focused on the next thing, like that, it opens up wide, right? And so we're sitting here in Sequoia National Park, and what happens is that as your awareness opens up, you start taking in, weirdly, and this is kind of a weird thing to say, it's a pseudopsychology, you almost start taking in an energy in from the environment. Like just the beauty of nature starts to come into your soul. It's amazing how this happens, okay? It renews you. In my personal opinion, anecdotally and subjectively, I believe that it heals you. I haven't been sick in almost a decade, and I believe there's ways to heal yourself just anecdotally in my personal experience. I found that I've been finding it to be very healing to be in nature and open and aware and letting the air move in, not needing anything, being at peace with how things are now, realizing that you are part of a larger whole. You are connected to everything else, transcending the fear of your death. Actually, the grandmother of my sons died yesterday, a beautiful, beautiful soul. Makes me very sad to think about that. And it was a classic COVID case where the hospitals are closed for COVID, but they're really empty, and so she can't go in and get treatment, and she suffocated, not from COVID, but just from cancer, and she shut down and died alone, because when she eventually got the ambulance, which took forever because of the COVID thing, they let her die alone in a hospital, not with her family, right? But of course, people don't want to talk about that. They just talk about this nonsense. So anyway, she died in pain, but God bless her soul. And what gives me relief is knowing that she's a part of me. I'm a part of her. They talk about this in the Bible. The Father is in me. Jesus says this, the Father is in me and I am in you. You are in me. And it's a connection. It's a branch. It's like you are a vine coming from the source, and you want to stay connected to the source, right? You realize that even if you might die in a living hell like my children's grandmother did from COVID lockdown, because obviously lockdowns kill people, what happens is that even though that might be disgusting and horrifying, and you can feel sadness about that and let it in and let it go, you can also realize that her soul now moves beyond her. She is in me. She's in my children. We are in her. We are in the Son, the Father is in us, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to be Christian to understand that. That you could even view that as a metaphor. You could take it literally and dogmatically from the Bible, or you could take it as a powerful, powerful teaching and it's a metaphor. That's up to you. You see this? the world has sadness in it, and it makes us want to fight for our lives and be competitive. But you have to realize that we're all going to die someday. And that's a major focus on the teachings in the Bible is the realization of the shortness in life. If you're identified as just this material thing, just constantly fighting to survive all the time, get that money, rack up those numbers, you've got to realize that eventually that's going to end. So as you allow yourself to become expansive, maybe you're not getting that immediate gratification now, but you become expansive and you feel a great peace and inner silence. And that inner silence, in a way, it weirdly props up your dopamine, but it's not this frenetic, frantic dopamine where you're sitting there just feeding off of it, needing more, always more, right? What you're doing instead is you're allowing that to be there and being at peace, and your dopamine, the way that I experience it, feels very stable and nice and beautiful, and you don't feel attacked because you know that you're a part of everything else, right? So it's not so focused, right? And so it happens that you don't need to control everything, but it's almost like you're in a sailboat and you just open up, you open up the sail, and that jet stream of high vibration energy comes in as you release, and it pulls you along, right? So as I'm doing this video, if I stay very present, I take in the energy of the forest, it can actually stabilize my dopamine and stabilize the neurochemistry in my brain, and I can allow the video to just come out. And I'm sort of steering the direction of the video, but I'm allowing the high vibration energy to move me along. And I want to deliver to you a very silky smooth, beautiful video that raises the vibration and that you feed off of that. That's what I want. And so what you'll notice if I'm steeped in high vibration energy, which, talking about that sad incident from yesterday, how could I feel that perfect? But my point, I can still accept it and be in release. Feeding off of that, what you'll see in me is you'll see a glassiness in the eyes. Okay, I'll have a glassiness in the eyes, and my pupils will get bigger, and what'll happen, but you'll see a softness. So that's one sense that you can tell if someone's feeding off high vibration energy or low vibration energy. There's a softness in the eyes and a glassiness in the eyes and a merger into the environment. What happens is that your focus kind of opens up and becomes diffuse, which then allows you to bring down energy. And there's a softness to it, but there's a strength. Now here's where this gets kind of funny. When your soul is in flux, and again, that's a pseudoscience, but my opinion and my strong opinion, when your soul is in flux, what happens is that you'll be pulled into HV, high vibration energy, but you'll also being pulled out in LV, low vibration energy. And what happens is that when you're kind of in between, it actually messes with your confidence because you're kind of going high and you can feel yourself kind of getting dopamine from being in release and being open and not being so aggressive. And then all of a sudden, and funny enough, when you feel like that, you wind up, here's the funny thing, you're not aggressive, but you wind up being the number one person in your field anyway. As everybody else attacks and whatnot, you're just effortlessly the number one person in your field, and just about everything you do turns to gold. It's not gonna be everything, you'll stumble sometimes, but so much of what you do turns to gold because, this is the hilarious thing. The people in low vibration are like, I'm not about that, I'm about to win, right? And it's like, but you're not winning, right? It's like, you're not actually winning. And then it's like, no, they are losing. And you're like, but that's not true, right? So it's like they philosophically align with winning, but if they would just let that go and transcend it, they'd actually win more. It's like to get what you want, let it go. They call that a Zen paradox, a Zen truth. Now, what people in low vibration need to do is they take that powerful sense of release and high vibration, and they associate that with the most low vibration thing, which is apathy, right? Because what'll happen is people in apathy that just take no action, they're like, I'm enlightened because I'm not taking action. Look at you taking action. And they're literally using that to say apathetic, right? People that, they smoke all this different stuff and they're like, oh, and they're all high and they're like, I'm enlightened. No, you're not enlightened. You're apathetic. That looks sort of like enlightenment. It's the opposite. Okay, it's the exact opposite. The lowest level of apathy where you do nothing, that's the most low vibration you can get. That's even lower than just someone that's angry and competitive. The highest level, you're not apathetic, you're at complete and utter peace, and you're compelled to take so much action because as you're steeped in high vibration energy, you want to share those vibes. You want to share that with everybody. You want to spread it. You ever been in the worst mood ever? You want to spread your bad mood and drag everyone down? When you're in a high vibration, you want to pull people up. So what happens, what I've seen is that when someone's in between high vibration and low vibration, it kind of messes with their confidence. And at a certain point, there's a choosing point. And at that choosing point, here's what you're going to see. They're either going to move and choose high vibration. They're going to say, I choose the creator over the creation. I choose to embrace the high vibration energy. I choose to roll with that. And I'm going to let that move through me, and I'm going to move in release. And what happens is all of a sudden their pupils get very, very steady. And they're glassy and they're open. Maybe they're a bit sad because of different things that can happen, or they can contract here or there, but they'll largely default to being open and soft and glassy. Now, what can also happen is sometimes people, they choose the dark side of the force. They choose the low vibration energy. And you'll see they get these very strong shark eyes. But weirdly, and here's the sad and unfortunate part, they actually often look more confident. So I've had friends like this, a number of my friends like this, where in their 20s, I'll see them hover between high vibration and low vibration energy. And they'll go high for a bit, and I'll see them feeding off that. But then I'll see them go low and feed off that, because you can actually feed off very competitive low vibration energy. But what happens is eventually they struggle to go with the high, and the low entices them and seduces them, and they start feeding off that, and then they call it into themselves, and they get that permanent tight shark eye thing. They get bags under the eyes and like really thick wrinkles prematurely, and their face turns to leather, and they look angry all the time. They don't smile when they do laugh. It's kind of like, ha ha ha! Like it's this kind of like competitive thing, and they actually begin to feed off insulting other people and bringing other people down, and they actually gain pleasure from it. You can study sociopathy, psychopathy, narcissism. They call these personality disorders. You can read books like The Sociopath Next Door, Sociopath World. There's a number of different books that you can read about this, or websites online. You can look up videos about it. And people that they go into low vibration energy, they actually gain pleasure from attacking other people. It actually feeds them to hurt other people. You'll know that you go into low vibration energy because anything positive, you can't resonate with it anymore, and you're sort of stuck in this weird mode, okay? But you're actually gaining confidence off it. Now, typically, there's a karmic price to be paid for people who go into low vibration, and there's almost inevitably this major downfall. And I can say that even myself, from my times where I did dip into low vibration, I've paid the price, and even in the future could continue to, from decisions I made in the past. So we all have that kind of karmic debt to pay, in my personal view. But again, it's just different types of confidence. Are you, like I said earlier, are you wiring your confidence on something that is anti-fragile, on something that's powerful, on something that's going to go the distance, or are you wiring it on something that's eventually going to mess you up? In realizing this, you can actually see, I'm getting more and more confident, but it's on kicking other people down. It's on me just getting this rush from low vibration and being competitive, which definitely that's a huge improvement from being apathetic. If you ever read the book Power versus Force, or Levels of Energy, they talk about how you go from apathy to kind of like this sort of anger to get to the point of courage to later get to love, peace, joy, enlightenment. So it's an interesting stopping point. But the problem is if you invite that in and invite it in and invite it in and invite it in, what often happens by the end is life can get really messed up, and you might have built towering confidence, but you have not built confidence that's anti-fragile, and you certainly haven't built confidence that's going to lead you in a very good direction and it's going to last the test of time. So realize that, again, when you're seeing a friend whose soul is in flux, you can have it where there's a bit more innocence there. You see them gaining confidence some days with high vibration energy, you see them gaining confidence sometimes with low vibration energy, and they're being enticed from both sides. And some will choose to move into high, and they'll move in their 40s and 50s and 60s, actually expanding and blossoming. And then you'll see some people that, unfortunately, they move down. And, at best, they deal with all the consequences of this. I'll probably make other videos about it so that you can see it and recognize it a mile away. Once I make videos about this, you'll be like, oh, it's that is the easiest thing. Remember when I make videos about, say, different types of psychology or different social skills, and once I make the video, it's just really obvious. As I make videos about this or even do interviews, you'll see this probably even more clearly than the social skills-based videos that I made in the past. It's incredibly obvious once you're just in the habit of looking. So again, like I said, it's really about choosing the type of confidence, building something anti-fragile, building something sustainable, and building something where you're not going to have to unwire it. Because frankly, if you just feed off low vibration energy later, you're going to have to unwire it. All you're doing is you're training the mind into this deep contraction, and later you're going to have to unwire the whole thing when you have some kind of horrible experience. So in my view, you might as well kind of start wiring it the right way now. Just consider that. Do you view yourself as this competitive, angry person just feeding off of that? Or do you see it to where maybe you can tap into that here or there to kind of step up and whatnot, but actually you're so much in high vibration that you wind up actually just lording over the competition anyway, to where, frankly, you just take up most of their mental real estate. Why? Because you're riding so much off of a high in openness. Your creativity is way through the roof. You don't lose energy from working. You can work almost infinite amount because you're just riding off that energy. You're taking it in. And you just look to other people like some kind of superhero. So which one do you want to be? Ironically, when you let go of the competitive, you compete at a higher level anyway in most cases, right? But again, that's not apathy. That's you at your highest potential.
To watch the moment the sun disappears behind the hill, a little world so still. Oh my, where did you go? These are the times I need you the most.
So this next part, this is gonna get really, really tough because I'm gonna introduce you to two different things that are going on in our society. And I wanna train you how to, number one, to understand it, and two, to contribute to this challenge rather than becoming a problem. We don't wanna see our society get ripped apart. So the first principle you gotta understand is that human beings will do anything for dopamine. We will die for dopamine. And what I mean by that is that if you look at a cocaine addict, what they're getting, my understanding at least, is when they snort cocaine, is they're getting little dopamine hits. Now, cocaine is a very dirty, nasty version of real confidence. It's this like kind of frenetic, all over the place version of real confidence. And for people who lack dopamine and don't have real confidence, they can get addicted on cocaine very, very quickly. Anybody who has a little bag of cocaine and they're snorting it, you know the whole old potato chips thing? Bet you just can't eat one, bet you can't eat just one. With cocaine, it's the extreme version of that. You're gonna snort that till the bag is done. I've got friends that have used cocaine, and you'll see them be awake for days just snorting it and snorting it because they want more dopamine. It is insane how this works. Human beings will do anything for the dopamine, they'll die for the dopamine. And so what happens is that if you have a certain set of beliefs that's giving you dopamine, is that kind of confidence dopamine prop-up mechanism, people are ready to die for it. And unfortunately, if your dopamine structure conflicts with someone else's dopamine structure, and those little dopamine structures go to war against each other, things can get very, very ugly, right? So that's why oftentimes you'll see people that feel threatened by each other and even hate each other if their dopamine's being threatened. Now, the next thing that you gotta understand is that our society right now is actually at odds because there's two different sides, one which we're gonna call individualists and another that we're gonna call collectivists, each that gets their dopamine in a different way. Okay, so understand that. Now, what's going on there? This is a little bit weird, and this is really tough stuff. And if you don't know what you're seeing, you'll be kind of blind to it, but once you know what you're seeing, it'll become very obvious. Now, some people are beginning to call this out, and it's not 100% clear, but in my opinion, other people have called this out, and I think it's true. Our country, at least America, I don't know where you're watching this from, is going into what you'd call a cold civil war. That means not a hot war, at least it's mostly not a hot war. People aren't shooting at each other most of the time, although there's cases of it, but you're seeing two different groups that are becoming very, very antagonistic, each one towards the other. And both of them believe that the other group is at fault because both of them have a dopamine structure that struggles to coexist with the other person's dopamine structure. Let's look at those two different dopamine structures. This will kind of maybe help bring some healing perhaps. One dopamine structure is what I talked about in a recent video in the Grand Canyon, and that is the individualist dopamine structure. What is that? What happens to you if you're an individualist is you say to yourself, I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to take massive action. I'm not going to rely on anybody but myself, and I'm just going to win and win and win. And what you do is you learn not to take things personally. You learn to be very, very tough. You learn to work really, really hard. And, they'll call that pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And if you're actually free to do this, if you have the freedom to go and do this, right, to live or die based on your own efforts, what often happens is if you become successful, if you really work at it and you work real hard, you become successful, is that your status begins to go up and up and up. And if you live in an individual society that allows your status to go up and doesn't pull you back down, what happens is as your status shoots up and up and up, you get more and more dopamine. As you get more and more dopamine, you kick in this thing called the winner effect. I talked about this in the Grand Canyon 2-hour video that I did. If you didn't catch it, you might want to catch it. And by might want to catch it, I mean catch it. It's life-changing. And basically what you have is that you're moving up, your dopamine increases. What happens when dopamine increases? A couple things. One is that you get much more lateral thinking. You ever have it when you're really, really confident? You can just talk and talk and talk, make jokes, create stories. You don't need some little script to come up with things to say. You're just so loose, so confident. Your words are coming out with incredible precision and confidence, and everything's amazing because your winner effect is going up, right? You're winning and winning and winning. And as a result of your winner effect going up, you feel so good that wins build upon wins. Wins build upon wins, build upon wins, build upon wins. Your eye contact becomes more steady. Your voice projects, hey, no problem at all, right? I personally will do speaking to 700-800 people, no microphone. People say to me, what's the technique for that? When your winner effect is kicked up, your voice just opens and it booms. Maybe not 100% of the time, you probably build your vocal strength to an extent, but a major part of it's just the winner effect, what people don't talk about. They just talk about vocal technique. Your body language loosens up. You get a higher sense of self-respect, so you have better personal boundaries. You start to control the frame more. You start to self-amuse rather than reaction seek, and people see this from you, and as they see that this is called, these things that I'm talking about, these changes of behavior, it's called subcommunication. It's the communication beneath the surface in your body language, your eye contact, the way you're carrying yourself, the way that you're referencing things. Okay, that's called subcommunication. Communication just, in a sub-layer to the surface of just the words that you're saying. People think, it's about the words. No, it's about the subcommunication. As your subcommunication improves, what winds up happening is people start to placate you. Because they feel how confident you are through your body language, your vocal tone, all this lateral thinking that you have, the fact that you're unoffendable, your frame is impenetrable. They see that, they start to follow you. And as they follow you, your dopamine shoots up even more. It's pretty crazy, right? You get an winner effect. Now, as your dopamine shooting up, you have more and more innovation. You feel confident. You feel empowered. That's what happens when you have someone who's basically free to move up as much as they want. America has incredible amounts of innovation because we're in an environment that, at least to some extent, it's not an entirely free society by any means, it's really not, but to some extent it is, more so than other countries. As a result, you get these incredible innovations, you get these incredible businesses and companies, incredible success stories that you wouldn't see elsewhere. It's very, very powerful, these kind of rugged individualists that pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Now, conversely, what you may have is what's called collectivism. What is that? Well, let's say, for example, that you're struggling in life. Okay, you're just struggling. And you're sitting there and you're thinking, why am I struggling? And then you think to yourself, well, I'm not the only one struggling. Let's get together with other people that are struggling. And let's say that you make a narrative and you talk about how you've been victimized. You know, society has been created in such a way where you're a victim. And if you actually look at it, you can almost make it to where the status is inverted. Okay, you begin to invert the status. So an individualist could be having the worst day ever, right? Worst day ever. Like, take myself, you know, my kid's grandmother just died. I knew her personally. Really sad, out here shooting videos, right? And in my mind, I don't want any sympathy. Like, I'm saying it, so it might seem a little bit like I'm digging for sympathy, but you see my point. Like, I don't want sympathy. I've been through tremendous difficulties in my business. You don't see me kind of like, I refer to it, but I refer to it as a teachable moment. But for the most part, I'm just like, look, even with all the things I have going against me, I'm on an equal playing field. You know, with me at a bar or club, I'm not 6'4", doesn't matter. I'm on an equal playing field, right? So part of my subcommunication is I'm not a victim. I'm self-reliant. Everything's great. Everything's amazing. I feel good. Let's go, right? Well, what happens in collectivism, in many cases, is you get an inverted subcommunication. So rather than it being of how little of a victim you are and that you're in control, it's more about how you're not in control, how external forces outside you are controlling you, how you're more of a victim. Then what you do is you bring together many different people, and frankly, there's usually more people that are struggling than people winning because it's like a pyramid that leads at the top. So there's just less of them by default, by necessity. That's the nature of success. There's less people willing to do it. So then what you have is that if you get together, you can make an inverted subcommunication. So what you'll actually do is, rather than speaking with a great, powerful voice, maybe you want to speak with a more stifled voice, maybe kind of whiny, right? So rather than looking powerful and strong, you might want to look kind of whiny, right? And just kind of whine about things and kind of call people out, right? And kind of, and sort of like, the main idea behind it is you want to purge, right? So status at an individual side, if you built your confidence on that, is about, you know what, if people want to insult me, let them. Free speech. If people want to say bad stuff, it's all good. If there's an obstacle, overcome it. In a collectivist mode, the underlying idea is that whoever's been victimized the worst, all of us as a collective are going to surround them and prop them up. Right? So if you've had it like there's layers to how bad people have had it, and the worse that you've had it, however much you can prove that you've had it worse and that you've had a hard time, then more people come together and prop you up. So the subcommunication becomes more about maybe calling out other people that could be bullying, for example, or calling out other people that could be offending you. So rather than saying let it roll off your back, it's about being offended. So the way that you gain status when you're a collectivist is about being offended, canceling people, showing how much has been against you, and in showing that, it actually rises you up in a collectivist system. It's funny how this works. So what you'll basically see is that the confidence that the collectivist has built is built on having had a hard time, and then the collectivists kind of come around them and say, we're going to help to prop you up. So basically what happens is that it becomes a badge of honor how hard of a time you've had. How do I know this? Well, I know it just by observing it, but it's also, I understand it because I was one of them. And I want to make that clear. I had been in that mode for most of my young life. I would sit there talking to my friends about how the government had it in for me, the system was against me, how I wasn't good looking enough, how I should have special treatment, and that really everybody should come prop me up. And that gave me confidence when other people came to help. And I know the personal hell that is. And this is what I think sometimes collectivists don't understand about individualists, but there's also things individualists don't understand about collectivists. For a collectivist that sees an individualist and they're being told to just step up, and they're being told to work harder and stuff, there's a pride and a dopamine that comes from taking responsibility that is not worth, that is worth, that there's no price for and is worth any amount of money on this earth. Not $100 trillion wouldn't be worth the joy that you get from taking responsibility, from saying that no matter how much I've been victimized, I'm actually an overcomer, and pulling yourself up and just overcoming. That's what they don't get. It's like, I think collectivists really believe that the whole thing of freedom is just this big excuse to keep them down and not let them kind of band together and help prop each other up. And I could see how offensive that feels, because if you're hurting and you're just in tremendous pain and your dopamine is really, really low, and now all of a sudden you're getting dopamine, you're finally getting dopamine, being part of a group, being part of a collective, having other people come and have your back, and trying to come up together. You can link arms like what humans are meant to do, and to come up together. And then you're being told by individualists, no, you're just a victim. How do you think that feels? It doesn't feel very good at all, right? So I think collectivists think that individualists are just trying to keep them down with some big stupid excuse. Because I thought that, I was in hell. But I think what individuals don't understand is what it feels like to be kicked down so low that you just wish you're dead. To walk into any environment with your dopamine in the basement, in the negative, thinking of taking your own life, thinking that you could just never make it, and people are saying, just try harder, and your dopamine is kicked down, your winner effect's kicked down, you can't think straight. If you're someone who's very self-reliant, think of your lowest moment. Think of the lowest moment of your life when you just can't even think straight and you're completely coping. Imagine that you're kind of just, maybe you didn't have it to where your life panned out as well as it did, even if you have been through a lot, and you're just kind of stuck there, and you're being told, just pull yourself up by your freaking bootstraps, right? You know what it looks like? It looks like someone's attacking you. And it looks like someone's out to get you, and you finally have a group that's there to defend you, and you're being told, no, you're bad. That's how I would have felt. I have been there. And, so there's a disconnect, and it's ripping our country apart. So what you're seeing is that people will die for their dopamine, and people think the other is against them. And in some cases it is true. Maybe sometimes people are against you. I understand that. I don't live in like a fairy world. But what an individualist doesn't understand is that the collectivist is hurting real bad. And in that collective that they have, they're trying to pull each other up. They're trying to get their dopamine back. And maybe what they feel is, I got something to contribute. If I could just get a little help here, I could have a seat at the table and I could bring more, and we could make our society better overall. So they're not necessarily against you. It sometimes feels almost like a cancer, because they're kind of just trying to suck the resources, right? It's like someone drowning, just pulling everyone down, right? Just pulling down, and just pulling down the legs, right? That's what it feels, So you're up there, you're swimming, and someone's down there, they're trying to pull you down to make everyone drown. I understand that. That's what it feels like. But see, what they're thinking is, hey, if you could just pull me up a little bit, we could all swim back together. I got something to contribute to here. Could you give just a little help? And that's what they're feeling. But then here's the thing, most individualists, what they've learned in life, they've learned that if someone would have given them a bit too much help, they know they would have become dependent. They know that if they had too much help, they never could accomplish what they did. We all have help. There's roads built, there's infrastructure built. Let's not pretend that you did it all on your own. That's not true. Roads, infrastructure, modern society, a lot of great things built with collectivism, right? Individuals want to think they did it all themselves. It's just not true. But understand that at a certain point, what the collectivists don't understand that the individuals are feeling is the individuals are like, I was like you. I wanted just to get a handout too. I felt I wanted the handout too, but luckily I didn't get it. Thank God I didn't get the handout. Thank God no one gave me the handout, because it forced me to dig deeper and to find potentials and resources in myself that I didn't know I had. And I became something that was so much more beautiful, something that I wouldn't give up for any amount of money in the world. For a trillion dollar handout, I wouldn't give up who I became in the process of going through that fight. And I don't want to deprive you that fight. I want you to be up here with me. So they don't understand, the collectivist doesn't understand. You're not being attacked. In some cases you probably are, because there's a range of people. Some people are nasty people. But in many cases, the individualist is looking down and saying, hey, come on up here. Because to an individualist, there's two horrible, horrible things that someone could have done to them. One is make them believe they're a victim, because victim consciousness shuts down your RAS and makes you not see the resources. There's all these opportunities, but if you think you're a victim, you can't see them. But number two, what happens when you tell someone they're a victim, it actually shuts down that ability to become self-resourceful, and you make them dependent. It's like the power of a wolf versus a chihuahua, right? There's these epic memes, right? These hilarious memes. You know, it's like there's a wolf, and it shows the wolf looking and thinking, kind of joining the humans. He's like, I'm thinking of going to take a little bit of meat from the humans. What's the worst thing that could happen? It becomes this chihuahua dressed in like some kind of little party hat or something. And what amount of money in the world would be worth it to be a chihuahua in some weird demeaning, it's a demeaning party hat? It's not worth it. What? I'm a confident little chihuahua because the collective comes and feeds me and puts a little party hat on me. Is that the pinnacle of life to you? I think the pinnacle of confidence would be being that wolf just running through the forest, knowing that you could die, but dying in a blaze of glory, dying in your own freedom, your own choice. But that's a decision that we all have to make. Do we value freedom over safety or safety over freedom? And what do you want to be? Well, I think the really cool thing would be is that if we could all be wolves at our potential, our physical potential, our actual potential in an environment, but then even have it to where, I mean, in a perfect world, we all came together and we're all wolves and all came together. And we have the ability as in humanity to have that. But there's going to be a number of different structural changes that will happen as far as the way that we have public education, you know, the way that we understand the world. And really, we got to stop attacking each other and allowing other countries to manipulate us, to start attacking each other, right? Other countries that don't like us, that are trying to set us against each other and pit us against each other, and realize we need each other. And we got to start having conversations. And I think one of the most powerful conversations that we can have is, hey, and it's a little esoteric, it might be a little over people's heads, but the root of it is, hey, we're all getting our dopamine from a different place. Some of us are getting it from self-reliance, some of it are getting it from getting a little help in the collective. But see, if you build that confidence in that, you know, as a collectivist, then what are you really, what are you building fundamentally? I think that you're building something that can get you to a certain point, but can you go beyond it? Or are we always going to be stuck at that point, right? You've built your confidence in a way where I feel like there's a ceiling to it. Whereas I feel like always leaning into your potential and being self-reliant, that you can still build other synergistic relationship and keep moving up and actually play off of the empowering aspects of competition, to where your competition is not someone who you hate, but your competition is someone who inspires you. And then we just keep getting better and better and moving up, and that we get to the potential that humanity has, and that we accomplish God's plan for humanity. Okay, I've been reborn. All right. Anyway, okay, so clearly, I think what I've tried to cover here is that there's many different forms of subcommunication, and the challenge is that each type of person is getting their dopamine kick by the way their confidence is built, their kind of dopamine prop-up mechanism. That little bird's nest in your mind that we talked about at the beginning of the video, that's going to determine your dopamine. And so what winds up happening is that if your dopamine is wired up in one way, and then another person's dopamine is wired up in another way, your mere existence can cause their dopamine to go down, or their mere existence, potentially, if you're not structuring your confidence properly, can cause your dopamine to go down, and it makes it very, very difficult to coexist. Again, also to really emphasize this point, people are so addicted on their dopamine that when their dopamine goes down, it is so painful for most people that what winds up happening is that they will hang on to whatever beliefs it is they have, like onto dear life. They'll kill for those beliefs in many cases, which is terrible, and they will block out anything that challenges those beliefs. This is just a huge, huge problem that human beings have, and it makes it very, very hard for us to coexist. Okay, so like I said, you know, like for example, if you're a rugged individualist and you watch, say, a news or media channel that's more collectivist oriented, you'll be watching the news anchors, say you're an individualist and you're watching, let's say Chris Cuomo, for example, or Don Lemon, and you see them like, oh my God. Ugh, how can this be? How could you? Cancel, cancel, cancel. Purge, purge, purge. Judge, 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 right? And you're watching this, and even in their vocal tone, you're like, who could watch this? But then say that you're somebody who's more of a collectivist, and you're watching Sean Hannity's like, all right, here's the deal. We're tough. We're going to be self-reliant, and we like this guy, and da-da-da. And you're like, you're so annoying. I hate you, right? Sean Hannity's on Fox News. So this is what can kind of happen to where, like if you're from Texas and you go to, say, Portland or Seattle and you see, somebody with dyed hair and they're walking around and they're like, how could you? Oh my God, right? And you're more rugged, you're more classic Texan as a stereotype, right? And you're like, what is this? I don't get it, right? Meanwhile, if you go see people being all kind of loud and brash, if you're from, say, a more collectivist place, it just seems obnoxious, right? People that may come from more collectivist countries and have like a several thousand-year history of collectivism, they see some obnoxious American like, oh my God, Brittany, you ruined my life. Can I buy a hamburger with my credit card now? And you're looking at this and you're thinking, this is vulgar, right? A lot of Europeans find Americans to be vulgar because they're so loud and brash, when I think there's actually a beauty in the loudness and brashness, but I also think there's a beauty in being, kind of out on the cafe in Europe and being more civilized. There's a beauty in both. That's why I like people from all backgrounds and cultures, and I like everybody, and I can kind of see the value of beauty in anybody. But again, that's because I've really structured my confidence in a way where someone else's existence doesn't have to lower my dopamine. I've been very careful about that. That's why this video, it's meant to have pragmatic aspects of how to build your confidence and be supremely confident, and how to have anti-fragile confidence, how to have confidence that is indestructible. But I also feel like this is something that maybe in future years, maybe future centuries, after things have got messed up and we're ready to kind of like rebuild on more stable ground, we can start looking at ideas like that, or like what we're talking about here. And we could actually, as we kind of have to come together, and as we should, we can begin to look at this, right? You might have seen me do videos before where like, I talk about how I wish I could have met you, and maybe you're watching this in the future. A lot of these videos that I'm talking about are things that I don't think collectively or in the mainstream are really ready to look at in a deep way now, or takes maybe much more seriously than a niche-based thing. But I really feel like people in the future, kind of when we're ready, maybe when we hit a little rock bottom or things get a little messed up, we might be ready to look at this stuff. So I hope that you're hearing me out here, both on a message of how to benefit yourself now, have powerful, anti-fragile, indestructible confidence, but also how maybe in the future we can start to look at how we're kind of, raising our children. I'm a father of 3 myself, how we're kind of coming together and looking to build confidence in a way that we can coexist, and in a way that we can be our best and all really be at our most powerful, and really see out God's plan for us of who we could become, who we could be in human potential. So that's sort of what I'm getting at here too. I'm obsessed with human potential and structuring environments where human beings can thrive. All humans of all backgrounds, genders, everything. I love it. Okay, I just love, my thing is I just like seeing every single human at their potential. So anyway, you can see how there's that disconnect where when somebody else's form of confidence kind of rubs against yours, it can lower your dopamine. It has this kind of nails on a chalkboard effect. And going from there, I think we could actually, let's get even a little bit more specific before we wrap the video. If you made it this far in, by the way, hey, props to you, because this is some pretty heady stuff. So you can actually look at it. We talked earlier about, like, say, collectivism versus individualism, but this even goes a lot deeper than you'd think. So basically the message that I have for you is that every type of confidence has a certain nuance, a certain look to it, and you can really begin to understand it, recognize it, pinpoint it, and as you pinpoint it, you can think more about the type of confidence that you want to build in yourself. A couple things to pinpoint is the confidence inner validating or outer validating? Is it individual validating or collective validating? Is it process validating or outcome validating? And is it offering value validating and the spiritual benefits that you get from that? Or is it taking value validating and the physical benefits that you get from that? So even when we're talking about something like, say, somebody who's an individualist, realize that even individualists have little subclasses within themselves, by the way. This is kind of funny to think about, because even if you look at something like, say, a Fox News, they can actually be pretty judgmental as well. A guy like a Sean Hannity, if you look him up, can in many ways be as judgmental as a Chris Cuomo or a Don Lemon. Again, if you look that up. But they'll be judgmental for different things, right? They'll have a different criteria usually. So for example, a lot of America was actually built on this kind of collectivism and even judginess around individualism. Kind of funny, right? So it gets to the point where, for example, In collectivism, one of the subcommunications that you might have is you'll say something that clearly you know isn't true, but kind of gives props to a certain collective group, just as a way of kind of, like you'll say something about a collective group that you know isn't true, but you're saying that to kind of prop up the collective, right? So you're saying something about a collective group, you're giving an attribute to them that really is untrue, but and you know it's untrue, but you just say it because by saying it, the subcommunication is, I'm part of the collective. I am actually subjugating even truth to show my subjugation and submission to the collective. That's a very, very common thing that you'll see in collectivism. Well, individualism has that as well. In individualism, for example, they'll kind of one of their ways of kind of flexing or stunting or gaining status, maybe it's not showing how much of a victim they are, but it could be something as simple as not swearing. They might say, oh, fudge, or oh, shucks, or gosh darn it, right? Gosh darn it. That in itself is almost like a miniature little lie if you think about it, because what does gosh darn it mean? It means that you're softening the message of what you're saying, because what you're trying to say is, I'm not one of those vile people who doesn't have it together. Does that make sense? The whole idea of a collectivism of individualists is we all collectively will judge those who don't handle themselves. So in many ways, for example, conservatives will judge things like casual intimacy, because they're saying, hey, you're just hooking up with everybody. You're going to pump kids everywhere and spread a bunch of nasty bugs. You're not kind of taking care of yourself. Or you said the F word. That's a little too extreme, mister. You should say, oh, fudge, right? So if you think about it, it's like, oh, that dirty hippie, they're puffing the reefer. They got the reefer madness and so on and so forth. I actually have never even smoked the reefer myself. But you see the point, right? There is a judginess that's there that conservatives have. Conservatives can often be more judgy. The more in a collective that you are, the more that you'll tend to judge. An ex-girlfriend of mine, for example, was a Mormon, and one of her biggest problems that she had with it was that she felt that they were everybody was judging each other to see how much that they could live up to their kind of conservative Mormon beliefs. She was from Utah and Salt Lake City, and that was a big problem that she had, and it actually kind of drove her away from the collective, right? So if you actually look at it, often on, say, conservative news networks, they're sort of like individualist collectivists. It's sort of funny, right? And so their demeanor is a little bit more, kind of straight edge, oh, fudge, maybe judging other people that aren't handling their own lives, but then that gives them confidence because they're like, I'm handling my life and I live up to our tradition, and the tradition and the sweeping of one's own porch actually gives them confidence, okay? But then what you'll have individualists who are not part of the collective, and they're so individual that they see the world completely through their own eyes. And what that kind of individualist is doing is saying, I'm actually not going to rely on any of the collective for groupthink. I'm not going to derive my confidence from any type of groupthink or any adherence to a group. I am completely seeing the world, or at least in much larger part seeing the world through my own eyes. So that's where you'll see, like, for example, somebody who's really, really individualist and just really lives up their own standards, they'll probably, in many cases, dress a little bit more artistically, right? Maybe more flamboyant colors. Maybe they've got a little bit more swagger. They're a little bit more kind of out there. Maybe a little bit more lateral thinking. Maybe a little bit more visionary. And they see the world in terms of just complete possibility. Nothing's off limits. Total possibility, and their artistry is incredible, their lateral thinking is incredible, and maybe that's the kind of person that has like a big beard or long hair, or maybe a little bit more flashy, maybe a little bit more swagger, and that's the kind of person where they're not relying on any kind of groupthink for their confidence. They're literally, their confidence comes from being outside the herd and trusting in their own judgment completely. So an example of that would say be Billy Walsh in the, I think it was probably the 4th season of the show Entourage. He was pretty predominant, but also in earlier seasons of the show Entourage. He was a movie director, and whenever he would see maybe an agent who would be wearing a suit, he'd say, "Shut up, suit." So that was his big accusation was, he's insulting someone wearing a suit, right? Somebody who's an individualist, but within they're in a collective of other people kind of handling their own business. Maybe they're in a nice suit, or some nice, like a nice classic white t-shirt, some classic jeans, and some nice clean leather boots, right? So the style and fashion they're going to have, it's a little bit cleaner, maybe a little more clean cut, kind of showing like I'm within the collective. I can remember at one point I was asked to do videos for Ask Men. And I tend to be a little bit more like the complete, like, see the world through your own eyes perspective. That just happens to be kind of the frame frame that I come from. That's sort of where I get my confidence. I probably got that from going out to like bars and clubs and just like having my frame tested so many times. And I just wanted to have like this complete see the world through my own eyes type of frame. There's some other advantages to that, which I'll also explain in a minute, that help what I was trying to do. But I think they have different goals. Like your goals will be different. So whatever works for you makes sense. But anyway, Ask Men, I remember they said to me, like, they would get me to do these videos, and I always felt like it was within this like mainstream perspective, and they finally said to me that I had to wear hair gel. And they're like, we'd really like it if you wore hair gel and maybe a nice suit. It's a clean look. It's crisp and clean. That's where your confidence should come from, your hair gel. And, I was a lot younger at the time, and I made this crazy video. I was so annoyed. I made this crazy video, and I started squirting massive volumes of hair gel into my hair. And I ran around through the streets, like meeting people and creating like all this like attraction and whatnot, running through the streets with my hair doused full of gel. Then I sent it back to Ask Men, and I was like, look at this. It doesn't matter, the hair gel, right? I was so offended, like I was offended that they thought that I should have this clean look. It's ridiculous. They're just trying to send me millions of dollars in leads and clients and visibility. They're trying completely to help my life, but I was young and I was artistic and I wasn't going to let the suits tell me what to do, right? So that, better angle would have just been to clean up a little bit, play that when I'm there, and then be myself on my own channel. But, I blew it, probably burned $10-20 million just to be, not a suit, right? I was just like Billy Walsh in the show Entourage, if you've ever seen it, Literally no price can compromise my art, right? When in reality, like, it would have taken 20 minutes a week to bring in a couple $1 million a year in leads. So it was foolish of me, right? All that visibility they offer me, they're trying to help me, and I'm just being a jerk. But anyway, that's a common thing too. So you'll notice, like, in the same way that an individualist and a collectivist, they start fighting, right? Freedom versus the collective and all that. Well, in the same way, even within individualists, there's these little fighting factions where, when I heard about the hair gel, the little suit jacket or things like that, it was like nails on a chalkboard, because it's taking away my dopamine. My dopamine's getting taken away. And, even for me, and this is getting pretty fascinating, things like, say, the Bible, I viewed something like the Bible as being very, very judgy, very condemning, very controlling, and it actually was something that really turned me off. So when I would hear about Jesus or the Bible, I got really, really turned off by it. Later, as we've seen, the left has gone really, really collectivist. Actually, the Bible, weirdly, like, this is getting so weird, there's been this weird inversion, right? There's an inversion happening whereas back in the day, I feel like the individualist collectivists were dominating, and so they're like, read the Bible, wear your suit, wear your little hair gel, and, get married young, and so on and so forth. Like, I felt like it was very judgy. Now what I feel like is that as collectivism has come into the country in such a big way, actually what you're seeing is that the Christians are actually the major bulwark against, all-out communism. Why is that? In the Bible, and this is what's so crazy, I'd love for you to reread the Bible from this angle. You can read the Bible from two different ways. One way that you can read it is as this very judgy kind of condemning book where you're not living up to certain standards. But another way is that Jesus Christ, one of his main defining characteristics is that he's actually very frustrated with the religious establishment at that time, the Pharisees, right? And the Pharisees are saying, oh, you can't perform healing on a Sunday, that's the Sabbath. And they have all these different rules. And what Jesus Christ is saying is, he's saying, no, listen, if somebody's hurting on a Sunday, I'm going to help them on a Sunday, because your little rules that you have, that little collectivism and what's called virtue signaling, you're just virtue signaling to each other how good you are by following all these little arbitrary rules. But what God cares about is about what's in your heart. And so if you read the Sermon on the Mount, I think the best reader is David Suchet. Look up David Suchet. He's on all the social media platforms. And if you read the Sermon on the Mount from the book of Matthew by David Suchet, what Jesus says is, he says, listen, I'm not here to go against the 10 commandments of Moses, but rather what I'm here to do is actually to fulfill them. And what I want to show you, and it's like a very beautiful passage actually, is he says, it's not about, what you're doing on the outside, it's about what's in your heart and the goodness that's in your heart. And it's not about, just that you didn't kill someone. It's to enter heaven, it's not just about not killing someone, it's about not holding that hatred to them. And it's about forgiving people. And it's, and what he says is that God doesn't just reward you for being, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and being nice to people, nice to you. But if you could actually forgive somebody who was bad to you, if you could forgive someone who you perceive as your enemy, and that God would look more favorably upon you for that, because you're pure in your heart, you've cleaned out the filth out of your soul, you've cleaned the filth out of your heart, and, you've done something, you've become a beautiful person, and that would be the kind of person God would welcome. And he says that the Pharisees, it's like this white dish that's white on the outside, but dirty on the inside. Well, Of course, Christianity, it's such a powerful bulwark against communism because communism and collectivism tends to be more about virtue signaling and even committing atrocities and purging and canceling to appeal to a group. And what Jesus Christ says is don't worry so much about the safety that you have in this life, but worry about your spirit and how it goes the next. And so, and he says you could be persecuted or attacked because of me. And so blessed are the people who are attacked because of me. And the way that I took that was that when you choose to be good, you may be attacked by that as collectivism becomes more common, and you stand up for what's right and the right ethics and doing what's in your heart. You could be attacked or judged for that in the collective, just like the Pharisees did. And when you actually choose to be killed for that, because many people, when that happens, they get purged, they get killed, that doesn't matter because what matters is your soul and your spirit and where you'll go next for eternity. And so that's why one of the first things that communists will want to get rid of ever is always going to be Christianity, because it encourages you as the person not to just go with what the establishment says and to virtue signal to everybody, but to say, you know what, it's about what's in here and in your heart and in your spirit. And even if you're purged and killed for that, because oftentimes in communist uprisings, anybody that won't submit to the collective is killed because their existence lowers the collectivist dopamine. What winds up happening is that that's why Christianity becomes a bulwark against communism, right? So funny enough for me, as somebody who would look at that as a more judgy when I'm younger, for now as I'm older, and as you see the society moving more leftward, what I've experienced is that idea of not just going with the trend or with what this society is like basically building to create collectivism, but just saying what's true to your heart and what's in your spirit. And really saying that it's not about how you look on the outside. It's not just about these little rituals. It's about what is right and wrong, and even being okay to die for that. That's something that resonates a lot more with me. And so to me, as maybe a little bit, almost like, one of those like dirty hippie kind of type people to a more conservative person, that kind of speaks to me in a different way now as I've gotten older. And so that's why I became fascinated with Christianity, and I've been rereading the Bible, because it doesn't matter if I take it dogmatically, as the judgy people would get you to do, but more as a concept. If you read, the book of Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount, or the book of John, and you can really look at those as metaphors. You don't even have to take them literally, in my opinion, although, again, you could be judged for that in certain groups. Turning water into wine, right? Taking negative, turning it into positive, or, giving out the bread, things like that. It's very beautiful. The idea of abundance and the idea of that there is an abundance in the world, or the idea of walking on water, having faith, and things like that. There's a lot of, the idea of the cross and the torment that we go through, but our faith and so on and so forth is like really powerful. So that kind of spoke to me on a pretty deep level, actually. And I think that that's going to be a bulwark against a lot of the stuff that's coming. So I just wanted to kind of point some of that stuff out to you. Basically, just the idea that, you can really understand your own confidence and build your own confidence like in these really incredibly powerful ways that are like really, really, really cool. And if you understand what it is that you're building, it's just really amazing, right? And so I mentioned that I would kind of talk about like why I built my confidence the way that I built it. I just found that, with a lot of, like, say for example, the Neil Strauss book when I was younger, or different media misrepresentations that I've gone through, and really just kind of seeing like, I didn't really get the option to build my confidence in the collective or by getting given adulation, because I kept kind of getting it knocked down. I didn't get my confidence by getting props on YouTube, because there's always people kind of try to knock down our content and misquote it or just distort it. So I was never able to just get confidence just from people giving me props. Even when I went out, like, I don't look like the typical good-looking guy when I go out or try to meet people or socialize or date or create attraction, right? I don't look like that guy, I'm not that person. So I was just never gonna get to be that person. That was never gonna be my fate. Was for me, I wasn't gonna be that like classically good looking guy and then sort of feed off living up to the social standard. That wasn't gonna be my destiny, if that makes sense, right? It wasn't gonna be my destiny to just get props from everybody and just live up to the collective. That wasn't gonna happen for me. And in many ways, that when I'd go out, I would take rejections, or I would take, guys trying to tool me and getting in these little disputes with them, some which I, initiate and being a brat. But you see, the point is like, I was never, like, being a balding ginger with light level autism and getting roasted in the media and in books and whatnot and social media, that was never gonna be where my confidence came from. So I had to get it where, like, everything about me was the type of confidence where the more that I got bashed down, the more that it forced me to see the world more through my own eyes and to live up through my own standards. And the fundamental key building block of my confidence at the most core level, like what was the most important, was this. I had to really figure out what was meaningful to me. What are my values? What do I care about? What do I think is so important and beautiful? I had to fundamentally understand that. And then once I did, I could start to live up to my own standards. I could live up to my own standards, keep my promises to myself, keep my own promises to who I am, and really, rather than just saying, what does society think is the best way to live, I could take their input and learn from mentors and great teachers and so on and so forth. Take that input. I'm not just like flying blind here. Take input and inspiration, but at my core, what I had to learn to do was to say, what are my values? Who am I as a person? Stop looking to others to tell you who you are. I just say, I got to look to myself to say who I am, maybe get feedback, but ultimately I've got to decide who I am. And in the process of doing that, I got to the point where I could go to a bar or club, or I could be put on falsely on blast in the media, or distorted, or warped, or have people, come after me, or get in these little kind of like savage matches in a bar or club, or things like that. And it was like, it actually fed my confidence because it taught me to disattach from what it is that other people think. It taught me to disattach from that and to ground myself more and more into seeing the world through my own eyes. And what happens when you do that is that you start to just get crazy confidence. Your self-esteem shoots way up. And the more that comes at you, the more powerful you become. It's actually everything coming at you is making you more powerful. It's like you're Godzilla. Everything shooting at you is literally you're growing. And that is what I was trying to get at here with this whole idea of indestructible confidence or anti-fragile confidence. Not just about having huge confidence. It's about you saying to yourself, wait a minute, is my confidence self-referencing or other-referencing? Right? Because there's sort of a different look to people that are other-referencing. Even a more typical conservative, it's like, I am living up to the individual center of the group, right? Or in collectivism, I am the bigger victim. And to me, I get that. I like learning from everybody. I can get along with anybody. I love that. I just want to give them their space and meet them. I don't care if someone's a far leftist or a conservative or whatever. I don't care if they watch CNN or Fox. I want to be their friend. I don't care. But for me, what it is that I want to build my confidence to where I could be a leader, and I'm not hit by that or threatened by that or offended by that, and I can bring people together, be a transformative leader, be a peacemaker, and really help us as a society really to get to what I believe is God's plan for us, which is to reach our potential, to come together, and to be the best that we can be, and to offer the most value as humanly possible, really to the entire world. So for me, what this is, like I said, there's a lot of practical implications, making those millions of dollars, building that huge level skill set, maybe creating a giant charity, maybe changing the world, being an innovator, being a visionary who sees the world differently and having the confidence to go with your vision, be an explorer, see what else is out there, trying new things, being amazing socially, dominant in business, dominant as somebody who's high status and has high status communication. It's amazing for that. But I also see that this idea of examining the positions that we're coming from and how the bird's nest is wired as having incredible implications for, really coming through a lot of the challenges that I think we all can see are coming. And in the dust from that, as we eventually rebuild, I wish I could be there with you. Wish I could have met you, because if you're looking at this in the future, I love you. Wish I could have met you, but maybe you can take this message from the past now and see, maybe just get a little bit of inspiration here about, what is that next level for us now that we've been through this and as the dust has settled, and what kind of new foundation we want to build back on. I think it could be pretty awesome. I hope you got a little bit of inspiration from this. So we're going to wrap with one of the most beautiful ideas of an ancient spiritual text, the Bhagavad Gita. And what it says in the Bhagavad Gita is that the purpose of life is not the end result. It's not the fruit of the labor. You can have no attachment to the fruit, but what you can have an attachment to is the action itself. You're entitled to the action, but you're not entitled to the fruit. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the way this plays out is that the main hero, he has to go to war against his family. He hates it. And God basically comes to him, or a version of God in that culture, comes to him. I probably said that wrong, but you get my point. God comes to him and says, listen, this is your dharma. This is what you're here to experience. So enjoy the process. Realize that you have no ultimate control of the end result, but you can be in control of the process. I may have misunderstood that. I may have misinterpreted it. Feel free to let me know in the comments where I didn't get that quite right. But that's the general idea. So when you hear this, you're thinking, why would I want to do that? Why would I just want to, I'm only entitled to the action, not the fruit of the action. That's terrible. I go to work so I can make that money, right? I get it, But I want you to think about the most powerful, memorable moments of your entire life. Maybe you're in front of a crowd, public speaking, just every word out of your mouth. You're not thinking how they're reacting. You're just loving being that central point of orientation, just feeling the energy moving out of you is the thrill in itself. Any money that you could get from that crowd, any validation that you could get from that crowd is pale in comparison to frankly, just to kind of dumb it down, to the dopamine that you're getting just from the action itself. The dopamine you're getting just from the action, nothing can beat that. Likewise, say that you're out at a bar or club and you're meeting everybody and everybody's attracted to you, or maybe except the most negative of people, but everybody's loving it. Any reasonable person's loving it, Somebody doesn't, you let them do their thing. But every reasonable person's loving it. And you're the center of attention and you're inviting everybody back to the after party. The after party's amazing. The whole thing's amazing, right? That in itself is often more of a thrill than any perhaps intimate moment that you might share as a result of that. And ironically, when you're in that mode, these intimate outcomes wind up happening more so and more frequently and with higher quality people anyway. Funny how this works, right? Or imagine that you're working on your career and you're just in this flow state where just doing what you're doing, just the craft itself, is the end purpose. And then you create that amazing innovation. You have that visionary idea, or maybe, you're working within a set framework, maybe at your job, but you're performing at such a high level that you wind up producing such a better outcome anyway, but it's because your entire awareness is focused in that present moment. Well, what this is, in my view, is in many ways the ultimate form of confidence, which is that your dopamine prop-up mechanism, that kind of where you're getting your confidence from, is just being present to the moment and being immersed in the process itself. And there's many different reasons why this idea of being present to the moment is so much attached to spiritual elevation, and really that'll be the topic for other videos. We'll hopefully, if I'm around a while, we'll spend decades talking about that. We'll see how long I'm around. But you see the main idea here, right? You don't even need me to look this up. You can look it up yourself. Read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. You can read the Bhagavad Gita, read the interpretations. Go very deep down the rabbit hole. Well, the end result of that rabbit hole is that you want to be at a point where there's a couple main shifts. Number one, you no longer are being run by other people's perceptions of you. You don't need to be in a collective and get the collective's validation. Frankly, you don't even need to not be in the collective and be this crazy hippie doing your own thing. You could even join the collective for a bit and kind of be open-minded to what they're saying and rock with that. And because you know who you are and you're just enjoying the process of it, as a result of that, again, your dopamine is still right there. You could have somebody insulting you and just playing with it and having fun, just being in the process of it. The joy of the dance, that little bit of rams locking horns is fun, right? Just the process of it is fun, and it doesn't mess with you. Maybe someone's hating on you. You love it. Maybe people are giving you props. You love that too. Glad you took it on board. Amazing, right? It's just all amazing. So you're not creating so many judgments. Your confidence isn't based on these judgments of a situation. Your confidence isn't based on, I'm right about this, so I have to be right about those other things. Even things like pillars of ideas are not as important because you can even transcend that. And ultimately, in the same way that the world has no ultimate purpose, again, you can be rooted in the joy of the dance, right? There was that old Tyler Durden quote from the movie and book Fight Club, right? The all singing, all dancing crap of the universe, right? He's like, we are the all singing, all dancing crap of the universe, right? But instead of saying crap, why don't you say you're beautiful? You're the creation of God. You're that extension. And you can make a decision to anchor yourself in that present moment and have that beauty emanate out of you to where rather than needing to suck all value all the time and get things all the time, you can actually have so much value emanating out of you. And frankly, your peak performance is at such a higher level anyway that you wind up getting more stuff, but you've transcended the point that you don't even care. It's almost like going back to your friends in high school, and because you don't care about their validation anymore, they can sense that, then you get more of their validation. Whereas if you go back to high school, like, I gotta make them like me, right? Then they can sense that. They sense they have power over you, and you're in a reactive relationship to it. So what we want to do here by getting more presence is in effect eliminating many of those reactive relationships that you have to the world, and you becoming the center, that kind of center point from which everything emanates out. And in doing so, you are connecting to a potential far higher than you're aware of. And really my goal is to see you and as many people as can have this experience get to actually live in that, get to experience that place, live in that place, and to see all of us reach our highest potential. So much of society, we're so dumbed down with all the dumbed down foods and media and programming and the bizarre low-level, low-vibration energy, low paradigms and all this and that, and we're stuck in it, just fighting each other, fighting for our little dopamine hits and all this. It's crazy, and it's not necessary. So that's what I want to invite you here to do today, is just to look at this and to experience it. Look in my eyes right now, okay? Look in them. Look at me, okay? Look at me. And what I want you to do is go look in the mirror. Look in your own eyes. Look deep into your own eyes. Connect to that divine presence that you have and realize that you're not trying to get anywhere. You are infinite. You are far beyond anything that you could imagine right now. And in knowing that there is so much more to you, that really there's a dimension that you can choose to identify with, rather than identifying with these other little dimensions. I got to keep the frame control on me. I got to keep the attention, the validation, the collective, get me my winner effect, my dopamine, please. I'm needy, right? Instead of that, you can actually begin to identify. You can begin to get familiar with and to identify with a dimension inside of yourself that maybe you didn't know existed. So that, to me, is what comes down to supreme confidence, what comes down to towering confidence, like the sequoia tree that we saw here earlier today, indestructible confidence, and anti-fragile confidence. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I want to just leave you with that idea and invite you to explore that a little bit more. I love you so much. You mean the world to me. Thanks for being here with me. Thanks for letting me share. I'll be back with a lot more. It's a pleasure to be here with you.